Hey y'all, I'm joined with Navon Mosley, former Purdue football player, safety, defensive back, now businessman, grinding, working back in his hometown, Detroit, where I was born, where I got my start before I went to the region, the Chicago area. So what's up? Thank you for joining me.
What's going on? What's going on? I mean, I appreciate you for having me on. Everything good. Everything good for sure.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. I mean, it's been a while since we chopped it up in this way. I know you kind of supported me when I was doing the station head thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then we talked before, but definitely had to get you back on to get a more updated story,
Definitely.
You've been on the move. So, man, we met at Purdue.
Mm-hmm.
Going into my sophomore year, his freshman year,
Yeah.
playing football. How did you choose? Let's start there. Like, what made you go from Detroit to Purdue? Because you got U of M, you got Michigan State, you got a couple Big Tens, and so how'd you end up at Purdue?
Coming out when I was coming out of high school, Purdue was for sure a school that recruited me heavy, and a couple other schools in the Big Ten. And I mean, on a large scale, when you start kind of getting to that Power Five ball, I mean, every school got something that stand out. Every school got the real good facilities and the whole nine. But it for sure was that home field I got when I went to Purdue that surprised me for sure when I got there. Felt real comfortable. I really liked the staff at the time. Everything was, it felt like home. And then as far as on the business aspect, kind of just looking at my position and how I could fit in when I was coming in back then at that time, it all made sense for me.
Yeah, I mean, you had a good start too, because you started your first year.
Yeah, came
So
in.
talk about how rare that is, because most guys, even the guys that came in with you or with me, they were all red shirting for the most part. Talk about, how did you even land that spot? Like, did you expect that? Did you know that? Did they promise that to you, or did you walk on and they were just like, oh nah, he gonna be on the starting squad?
It for sure was a blessing for sure. I mean, it was like prime camp, and then I was starting that first game for sure. But when I came in, there wasn't no situation when I was getting recruited where they were promising me I was coming in starting. I just kind of came in. I deep dived into the playbook, and I had a real good training camp, and I was just competing hard. And I think the coaching staff kind of just seen that, I could play at this level. I was talented enough to play at this level, and they threw me in. They threw me in the fire. They threw me in a situation to see how I responded, and I responded well. So I ended up starting that entire freshman year.
So did you feel like, did you know that you were gonna have the success in your first year once you started, or did you feel like you were in that moment that was like your top, or did you feel like, I don't know, what were your thoughts and feelings in that moment, or was it in your later years where you really felt like, all right, I'm taking off now?
Coming in being young, I was just passionate to be playing the game. I was just trying to show everything I could do. All the plays I could make at that time, and then in training camp, we sat down, had a meeting with my coach. And, we was going over the depth chart, and then that's when they told me like we're gonna start you, with the ones on the depth chart for the first game, and it kind of was like that moment right there that kind of snapped in my head, like everything I always thought and I knew that kind of confirmed it for me for sure. And I wouldn't necessarily say I was surprised. I just more was like grateful, like man. I remember calling my mom, like, man, I really just got the starting job for sure. And it kind of was a confidence booster for sure after that work you be putting in and stuff.
And what was like the biggest challenge, or did you gain the respect from the older people that already been on the field? Did you feel like you had to get in there and work for their respect, or what was that relationship?
You for sure gotta gain those guys' respect. I mean, granted, they welcome me in and things like that. But I mean, just on the deep side, I felt like more so when you go to college, it become like a grown man game. for sure. And I was playing, as a freshman with a lot of talented guys at the time, and a lot of guys on that defense, who went on and did some good things. So I kind of felt like for sure, when I got the opportunity to step up and be with the ones, I kind of had to perform and make sure I was communicating and raising my level to what these guys was doing around me for sure.
Now, in the midst of all of that, you went on to cross Omega Psi
Mhm.
Phi.
Yeah.
Talk about that experience, like how, and that's another, connection between the two of us. That's my,
Right,
that's my sons, what I'll call it
right,
on here.
right, right,
But
right.
what was that like trying to balance, the two, football is a full-time thing, like
Definitely,
aside from
definitely.
school as well, and
Mhm.
doing well in your classes and trying to
Right.
juggle all that. What was that experience like for you?
It for sure was kind of a learning experience that definitely set you up for the future. As far as with the service and everything that comes, with the bros. But I mean, it was a good time, and I really think with the bros it was more so like the give back. Putting on just for like the next to come behind me, which was a kind of similar situation. At some point in time in my career with football, when I became that older guy, I was making sure I was, giving back and, putting guys in that position. So it was definitely a balance. It was definitely a challenge, but I mean, it's for life. So
Did
life
you
always challenge.
so did you feel like they went like hand in hand, that because you didn't have that much time on your hands, you kind of like, did you feel more productive in a sense?
Mm. I feel like it was two different realms,
Okay.
as far as, with the bros and then with ball. I feel like it's two different realms, but again, it still was like a balance with both of them, just a different type of balance. I think more so with service and kind of giving back and doing things in your community. With the fray, it was more like I'll say when you're an athlete, obviously there's community service events you do with the team and
Mhm.
things like that, but that wasn't the kind of the main priority why guys playing like, oh, I'm playing, I want to do community, I'm playing, I want to get back to my.
Right.
A lot of guys are playing for different reasons compared to when it comes to that service aspect. That's one of the biggest things for sure. Being a stand up guy, giving back to your community.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I know aside from all that, you still found the way to get lit, to turn
Oh
up,
yeah, definitely,
all the
definitely.
all the college stuff.
Oh
Now,
yeah.
you had a unique experience towards
Hmm.
the end, the
Right,
pandemic, of course.
right,
So
right.
2020, supposed to walk the stage.
Hmm.
Um, you had plans to enter the draft. Talk about that
Right.
experience and like uh
Hmm.
when you realize my dream or my plan is not going as
Right,
planned,
right,
pretty much.
right. Definitely. I mean, I think with the pandemic, just across the board for everybody, nobody really seen that coming. Nobody knew what the outcome was going to be. And it just so happened that I was, graduating, entering a draft. Honestly, one of the craziest times, probably in the last, who knows, was going on. The whole world has shut down. So it definitely changed the trajectory of how the entire draft went for a lot of guys, not just me, but a lot of guys. But I know for me, um, graduated that end of 2019. I was training out in Chicago actually. Um and I was hearing a little bit about the pandemic, but it hadn't hit the fan yet. I was hearing about this virus that
Mhm.
was coming out about, but at the time, I mean, I was so locked in with training and what was going on. I really didn't think it really would have anything to do with what's going on in
A
football
lot of
world.
people didn't, because I
Like,
started I
it's
started
the thing.
reporting on that back in like
Yeah,
November, December, and everybody like just ignored
yeah.
it.
Yeah, it was like I remember hearing about it was this crazy virus, the whole nine. But I mean, I completely like this had nothing to do with this. Is not going to
Yeah.
stop nothing that's going on over here. This is a completely billion-dollar industry we got going on right now. And then leading up, I want to say Pro Day was supposed to be April 2nd that year, and it was like a week before. It was a week before. I remember watching the news. It was March, and it became this nationally global pandemic emergency. They finna shut the whole world down for like 2 weeks, and 2 weeks turned into like 6 months. But actually, what happened during that pandemic? Oh my, not just me. I mean, plenty of guys pro days got canceled, but Purdue was one of the schools who pro day got canceled, And a lot of guys, we really didn't get to perform in front of a lot of teams who wanted to see it perform. They kind of it changed how, I mean, really all 32 teams were drafting that year, and how a lot of teams was kind of picking up guys on the free agent level, really. And I kind of caught the short end of that one. Guys didn't get to see me perform in person and see me run and jump and do all my drills. And it definitely kind of hurt me on the back end.
Do you feel like you got slighted, something taken away from you? Were you like angry in that moment because you didn't really get to showcase,
Mhm.
did you have any resentment towards like the pandemic, or like were you just like, all right, this just not how God planned it, I'm gonna just go a different way and that's it? Or did you have to take your time to think about what you wanted to do after?
Man, I mean, it was a billion emotion kind of going through me. But I will say, just playing ball the entire time. The older you get, and the more knowledgeable you get about the game, especially when you get to them higher ends of college, you understand the business of it. So obviously, this was something I played my whole life. Something I love. It's like most guys, their first love is playing their sport. So I had really had to take a step back and look at it from the business aspect of what was going on, kind of how my cards was getting played out. I say it stung for sure, but I mean, I couldn't, sit around and be down about it. I kind of had to make a plan and see, what was next for me.
So when did you like mentally decide like, all right,
Yeah,
I'm hanging up the cleats, this is
yeah.
it? And like when you did that, what made you not want to go back and like try
Mm.
again?
For me, I had told myself, um, the draft was in April. It was no like rookie mini camps because of the pandemic. It really wasn't no visiting teams. It was people for sure reaching out to my agent. But when training camp had started and like that first game came, I had told myself, like, September, October come around, if I'm not getting any workouts, I'm gonna have to look at it for what it is. I'm gonna have to mentally, step away. And a lot of people thought I was crazy. They're like, that's early. They're like, that's early,
Yeah.
Navon. Like, you tripping. Like, that's early. But I kind of had to put that mental clock in me. I said, I can't sit around. Now, granted, that was early, but I really feel like I had to make a decision and kind of go for what's going on. And understanding that pandemic was a pretty weird time. It wasn't a lot of certainty with a lot of things, so I never knew how stuff would play out.
So did
So I kind of make a decision.
so do you still feel like that decision was, the best thing for you to
Mm.
kind of like g- the fall cutoff time? Like I say, like people sleep that for those who don't know, you had talent, you could have
Yeah,
like went
definitely.
far in it. Like so you
Yeah.
gave yourself that hard deadline. Did you
Mhm.
ever have a thought in your head like, dang, maybe I should have tried a little harder? Or, it
Um,
was, or did you even get any looks in that time period?
yeah, man. Actually, but believe it or not, like this is no lie. This is no lie. So I mean, eventually, down the line, I had took a management job at Ford. I actually was at work, and then my team had reached out to my agent one time, and then that's kind of when it would like jump back in my head. But
So why you ain't go for it?
but but during this time, so during this time when I had made the decision, like, I'm done, focus on, what have you. I like looking back, I would never like, man, I wonder what happened if I would have. I think the thing I kind of just mostly know of myself was like, I look back and I made a decision. Cause I mean, it's so easy to look in hindsight, like, oh, what if.
Right.
But like, I think the biggest thing for me, I was young at that time. I just made a decision. Like, I can't understand what's going on.
So once you got, you say you're back in Detroit, your hometown, you're
Mm-hmm.
working for Ford, you're
Mm-hmm.
just into life after
Mm-hmm.
school,
Right.
life after pros and everything like that. What was that transition like there? I know you got into some other, you remember you mentioned, speaking of business, you mentioned football
Mm-hmm.
like a business, but you got into some other business endeavors.
Yeah.
To talk about
Yeah.
how life has been from that aspect and just, starting a new career, but also picking up some side hustles,
Yeah.
you know, what's that been like for you?
For sure, kind of stepping away from ball and kind of enter into that career aspect of your life. It's a for sure for a couple of months, like a great period. It feels a little weird. You're doing something so different. But I really think if you take kind of that mindset from playing sports and when I got into my career, like every day learning, every day getting better. and kind of just looking at it from a team aspect. You really start to succeed in really anything you do when you kind of focus on getting better. But I for sure had ended up taking a management job at Ford. Was blessed for that opportunity. Came in there, excelled well, and still doing well. And like you mentioned, I picked up, just a couple of passions I had learned just from connecting and networking at Purdue as far as in the real estate space, and kind of started working on properties and things of that sort with flips.
So what would you say, what advice would you say, or what would you say to the guys, I hear the stories that like athletes don't really take their education as serious when they're in school, or
Right.
they might be flunking out. Like, what would you say to the importance of actually like, paying attention in the classroom and getting an education and having a backup plan? Because you did have a
Right.
backup plan, and for you,
That-
you were blessed and fortunate enough to where both your plan B and your C is going,
right.
good for you. So, what would you say to the younger kids coming behind you about like, not just putting all your eggs in one basket?
Right. Right. I definitely say when you talk about education and that whole nine, especially being a student athlete, I know it's pretty easy when you kind of get in this college game and you want to focus only on the ball aspect. But I really want a lot of these young guys to understand when you put your name on these academic books on a lot of these transcripts, you still representing yourself. You want to be a top notch guy in whatever it is, because that may be what set you ahead 10, 20 years down the line. If something doesn't work out for you. So I never want guys to kind of get to college and get lackadaisical on the education aspect, because it's short enough when you're really playing ball at these high levels, man. Believe it or not, some of these coaches, I've seen it happen, plenty of times. Guys' careers be tarnished because they wasn't taking the classroom serious, and it cut into their playing time. It cut into them being ineligible. Now you can't be on the field. So understand, like, this game is really a business. That's part of the business when you're in college. Like, flat out. You can respect it, not care about it as much as you want. It's gonna be a lot of things in your business where you don't, have the same respect for it, but it's something you gotta handle for sure.
Man, like, and y'all sleep on my son. Like, he's a
Yeah,
very smart guy. We were just chatting even before we did this interview. I just started my LLC, so I've been talking to him about some business stuff, and I talked to him in the past about investments and things like that. Like, you really
yeah,
spent a lot of time investing and
yeah,
doing research and building
yeah, definitely.
your knowledge on different
Mhm.
topics and things. And what made you become like a businessman? Was it just something you were doing? Because I remember you telling me you sitting in your room reading books and stuff and
Yeah,
educating me on stuff like,
right.
so what made you get into like the real estate, the investment? Like, let's talk about that.
We had a Purdue luncheon um at Purdue one time. I mean, a lot of these alumni would come back, and for sure, like, being from Detroit, you don't always see, like the highest levels of success. So I would, see guys come back who was running these companies, running construction companies, real estate companies. And I kept seeing these guys, like, had a foot in the real estate game, and it was something that interested me. So, I would, watch YouTube videos and kind of just research. And I used to always say, like, okay, when I get to the league, I get some money. Like, this what I'm doing. I'm gonna start flipping. You know what I'm saying? But even when the league didn't work out, I kind of still had that fire, that passion on my head. Like, this is something I want to do. This is something I want to try. So, it's one of them things you kind of got to take the risk on, and, put your foot down and get going with it.
You mentioned finances. Like,
Hmm.
what, I feel like athletes, you can either be someone who balances your money or know what to do with it, or you can completely get that money and lose it. Um,
Definitely. Yeah.
what would you say is like the biggest downfall when it comes to money and athletes, or what advice would you give to, the young cats who just like,
I,
kind of careless with it?
yeah. I say on a small scale level, what's going on now in college, is great for a lot of college athletes, but could be dangerous as well if they don't got somebody in their corner, somebody in their ear. 'Cause I mean, a lot of these guys is, 19, 20. You never really had 10,000, 20,000, come in your account, or really just in your life period. So you kind of careless with the situation. You don't know how to balance it. And when you get on a kind of higher scale, you talk about some of these guys get to the NFL who 23, 24. You give them, half a million, 400,000, whatever it is. After taxes, you never know how to manage that. You don't understand how taxes
Mhm.
work, and things of that forth. It's for sure a learning experience. It could be a crutch for them. I don't really think we should down upon them as much as people do in the media when they talk about some of these guys blowing their bag. I think some of it is careless, but for sure, this money management is something I feel like everybody got to learn, and it's not always the easiest.
So what would be your if you can give them one recommendation, one tool when you get your first when you get your first 10,000 and when you get your first
The first
100,000
10,
and your first 100, what would you
yeah.
say would be with your tips, your recommendation? Let's start with
Uh,
the 10 first, the small.
yeah. You get your first 10. Just wait. Just sit for like 30 days. Don't go buy no shoes, no clothes, nothing. Just kind of wait. Just wait and think about what's the smartest thing to do. And then after 30 days, put half up, and then you can go play and do whatever you want to do. But I know I'm just speaking from experience. You know, the first time you may even college. You know, a lot of these young guys, they get Pell Grants or whatever, and they drop 5,000 in your account, whatever. I remember I seen a lot of guys on the team. We going to buy the Xbox.
They going to get the Piercing Pagoda jewelry at the mall.
Remember, I got I forget what the little cost was. I went to go buy some Giuseppe's. Like I went crazy. Like I went to go buy the Giuseppe's. Like I'm going up. You know what I'm saying? And then towards the end of the month, you start looking at your account. You praying to God on that next rent check. Like, I need this next rent check to drop. Like when is it dropping? Is it dropping on the first, 15th? When is it dropping?
So you did have that mistake. You did have that period of time
Yeah,
where you
definitely.
were careless with your money.
Definitely, yeah. I for sure had a time where they dropped some money in my account. I'm just even on a small scale, like you going out to eat every day in college, like you know how ball players do. Like, man, we not eating on no dining court. We're gonna go eat here, eat there, this, that, and that. You like, man, I'm really spending. I need my rent check to drop. I'm down on my last couple little hundreds, and just growing. You get them learning experience where you really learn how to manage your money and what you really need to be spending your money on.
Now, I gotta ask, just popped in my head. Like, did you feel any pressure from your family to make it to the league or anything?
Absolutely. Like
Okay.
even kind of when I came home and I made that decision, like I'm not playing. Like guys was like, bro, you is tripping. Like you're bugging. Like if everybody's bugging, you're the one that's bugging. You know what I'm saying? Because I mean, I was in that limelight. A lot of guys they would watch me on TV, pick off Michigan and things of that stuff. So they're like, oh yeah, Navon going to the league, but they didn't understand kind of how that business aspect works. So when I made that decision, like, yeah, I got to walk away from the game. They're like, no, you're tripping, you're tripping. But it kind of I always would explain to them like, man, I got something for us, yo. Like I'm gonna make it a different way for us for sure. You just gotta wait.
Now, I know we're getting close to time here, but like, would you do anything different? Would you do anything over if you could go back in time, or not really? Like, would you have
No,
entered the draft a year ahead of time, or even when it talk about money, when it talks
right.
about entering a fraternity at the point that would you do anything in your college career over?
The only thing I would have did different is I would have took even more risk because at the end of the day, you know what I'm saying, you get this one life. I wouldn't have thought so much about it, man, if I don't make this play, I'd just went out there and know these are some of the best times of our life and just enjoy it.
And what advice would you leave to just anybody, maybe who are contemplating starting a new business, contemplating athletics,
All
pro,
right.
dealing with pressure from different angles in society,
Yeah.
family? What last piece of advice would you leave with them?
Whatever you want to do, just write it down, attack it, take action, and don't sit and be timid about it. Go hard with it for sure, because whatever you can do, you really can make it in for sure.
Oh
So,
wait, I almost let you off the hook.
or,
What tunes turned you up in the locker room? What was your
uh,
locker room tune? What's on your locker room playlist? Your athletes? I mean, not athletes. Your favorite artists,
favorite,
or either your favorite songs. Give me a top 5 artists and favorite songs.
for sure, I was listening to a lot of Meek Mill. Man, everybody from Detroit, so I was probably had a whole Meek Mill playlist, bunch of stuff from the city, in my playlist. Lil Baby going in a playlist for sure. What else was we listening to back then? Like 2016, who had a crazy run? Kodak had a crazy run back then.
I know. I think Lil Uzi might have been out.
Yeah, Uzi was bumping, but I
Drake
for
was
sure,
up to something. Yeah.
yeah, I for sure was like bunch of stuff from Detroit. Baby was like
Sada
just
Baby.
big. Sada had a crazy run back
Mhm.
2017.
T
Sada.
Grizz
Yeah,
T Grizz.
Greg. Yeah, T had just dropped that first day out back then. I remember being in the door and he dropped that. So
Yeah. I'm
yeah.
trying to think. It was what's the Babyface? I don't know if he was out back then though.
No, Face was been. Yeah, Face was
Yeah.
dropping back then too. Peasy, everybody was dropping back then.
Oh
A
yeah.
lot of my guys, so you know.
Oh yeah. I know y'all your locker room probably used to go
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah. And then it's funny though because I'm from Detroit, so I'm coming from north. Then you got guys coming from down south. It's like two whole
Hmm.
different sounds. And we
Yeah.
trade, we trading sounds. I'm putting them on everybody in Detroit. I like Young Boy had just like took
Mhm.
over down south at
Right.
that time. So everybody up north, like 2016 was just he already
Right.
had down south
Mhm.
like took over. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, I really got on the young boy when I came down here too. But this
yeah,
has been a good conversation. Thank you
definitely.
so much for chopping it up with me.